When the signal was first picked up, no one knew how long it had been transmitting. The carrier wave and transponder ID were unlike any seen in common galactic communication. Most believed it was a trap. This was the first belief. It remained the most common belief. When it did not stop after several years, others believed it to be a warning beacon of some sort. This belief was also common given its location. Some believed it was a treasure, not many. One such treasure believer was the captain of the heavily modified ore trawler Spiteful, none other than intergalactic treasure hunter Blas Manta, as cold and sharp as the void itself. Springer of 1,000 traps, conqueror of 100 damned tombs, bedecked in treasure and accolades, and utterly without fear. The burly Sparovian sported an enormous sidearm of unknown provenance and a gaudy coat, blood red, bedecked in gold trim. When he learned of the call of a signal none other would dare approach, the temptation was too much for him to resist, though the circumstances gave even him pause. With his rough and tumble crew and adventuring fleet, he ventured toward the signal. The galaxy held its breath as he crossed into forbidden space and charted his course for the depths of it, the first ship to do so intentionally in living memory. Even most of his devoted followers, the other ships in his fleet, and the most intrepid news media stopped at the border of forbidden space to wait for him at Terminus Station, the closest outpost to the pitch-black area. With only his camera operators and a skeleton crew, all having said their goodbyes and being paid enough to live like kings should they survive, the Spiteful entered an area of space far blacker than the rest, where not even stars twinkled. A haunting weight pressed down that chilled all of them, regardless of species, to the bone. In a galaxy of trillions of sentients, all rules are bound to be broken, except one. Nobody inhabited forbidden space, and nobody went there, other than the occasional foray by emergency services and military forces to guide a vessel that had wandered in by mistake. This had been a universal truth for nearly 10,000 years, and nobody had forgotten the reason. Things died there. All things. Nothing grew and nothing lived. Even on ships with specialized hydroponics bays, plants died. Rations stopped nourishing. If enough time passed in forbidden space, even fusion reactions and basic biology grew cold. The stars themselves were dead. No organism or machine had ever lived past a handful of days in forbidden space, though occasionally cold, inert remains had drifted out. If you returned quickly, your body and technology would eventually function normally. If you stayed too long, you never left alive. The atmosphere aboard the treasure trawler was tense and silent as days ticked by. All knew they were on borrowed time. None knew exactly how much time that was. The voyage took several days at maximum burn, whereupon the fleet encountered, with shocking suddenness in the utter blackness, a pulsing blue orb. The orb was nestled in an array of advanced and mysterious energetically charged scaffolding, and just above what appeared to be a small, lit, glass-enclosed area. Sensors confirmed the orb was the source of the transmission. The trawler stopped 10 kilometers distant from the orb and sent out a cautious, light-scan pulse. Immediately, the orb reacted, reorienting and broadcasting a signal that effortlessly took over the intercom system and displays aboard the Spiteful. Herself a veteran of 100 treasure hunts and at least as many pitched battles, the Spiteful was armored and shielded like a dreadnought and packed to the gills with systems so advanced that even the flagships of stellar empires were put to shame, fueled in large part by the quixotic array of alien technologies from past treasure hunts stuffed into every nook and cranny. The broadcast bypassed all of these measures and hijacked all systems effortlessly. A man stood in the image, human. The sparse crew rippled with shock, the creatures of legend and whisper. None had ever seen a real human in the flesh, but all had heard, read, and watched enough about them to recognize one. One of the two legendary precursor species of the modern galaxy, the vanished creators of practically every baseline tech that modern life was based upon. The two species whose merged art was still the standard bearer for what art could be. The one on screen looked middle-aged, but its eyes conveyed something ancient. "Hello, traveler. I bid you welcome. My name was Dr. George Montgomery. If you are here, you have probably followed my beacon's message. I ask for your indulgence as I tell my story. You are not in danger near the beacon. All aboard the fleet listened, rapt. They could tell the words were true. In some impossible-to-define way, all had felt the death aura of forbidden space fall away as they neared the beacon. About 100 years before my time, humanity had its first contact with an alien species. Our fiction had always dreamed of and dreaded this moment in equal measure. We were advanced but still in our fledgling state, and worried what we would find when they finally reached out. Our joy when the Alari were not only friendly, but beautiful, cultured, artistic. It's hard to explain how glorious those days were. They uplifted everything in our society. Hunger and war were gone overnight. Transportation and pollution were solved. More than that, they made our art better, not just our science. They taught us new ways to make music, poetry, and film. Both of our species were intensely artistic, and as they entwined, those traits blossomed ever greater. But even the Alari could not have imagined the depths of human ingenuity. They were a very long-lived species. In fact, between that, their beauty and their gentle nature, they were shockingly reminiscent of an artifact of human fiction. Elves, to an extent that there were theories our species had known each other in some younger age. They lived about 800 years, naturally. They never could have imagined we might outlive them. Their technology, with our understanding of our genome and our endlessly adaptive bodies, effectively eliminated aging. We could die whenever we chose. You would think everyone chose to live forever, but they did not. In fact, most stuck to the natural human lifespan or added maybe 50 or 100 years. I was one that chose to live longer. I was one of the best scientists humanity had to offer, and my breakthrough physics work with the pioneering Alari scientist, Dr. Shayana Luxarial, could not be allowed to fall by the wayside for something as petty as mortality. I started working with her when I was in my mid-50s, and during centuries of work together, we unlocked so many mysteries of the cosmos, and with practically no effort at all, we developed a love more powerful than anything I had ever imagined. She was the end of every sentence I started. She was the air in every breath I took. She still is. When I was about 500, Shayana about 600, the Sill attacked. You may or may not have heard of them. Either way, let me put your mind at ease. They aren't around anymore. They were a voracious, impossible foe. The combined sciences of humanity and the Alari fought back with might, creativity, and raw power unseen since the universe formed. It wasn't enough. The details don't matter, but we were going to lose. Thousands of planets. Trillions of happy, healthy, luminous beings. Most already gone. The remainder pushed further and further back. Shayana and I had turned our research into the nature of reality into something horrendous, searching for a way to stop them. We became the last bastion of both humanity and the Alari after Earth and Alaria fell. Our research facility was now massive, in part military factory, guarded by the remaining scraps of the Allied fleets. We devised terrible weapons, relativistic railguns, minds that permanently shredded reality in haunting ways. Many more things it would take ages to describe if I had any desire to do so. And all of them took a terrible toll on the Zill, but they kept coming. Our final gambit, which we had actually devised some years earlier but hoped never to use, was not a weapon that could be contained, not one that discriminated. It created the gulf you crossed to get here, a vast space. We called it the crime because that's what it was. You already know what it does. It kills everything. A murder agent equally effective on biology and technology. A murder agent that snuffs out the fusion reactions of stars and stops everything from a mammalian heart to a spark striking off flint. It bends physics, time, and reality itself, permitting nothing to live. I will share no details on how it works or how it was developed. And we destroyed those records and all of our notes about a year after we deployed it, and we're sure it had worked. We had fought the Sill a long time. We knew their ship speeds. We knew the location of their worlds. Most importantly, we knew three things: that they were a hive species with a queen, that their homeworld was within the volume the crime would encompass, and that their ships could not escape the volume in time for it to matter. Humanity and the Alari used the last of our resources and ships to stage a final, massive attack on Zil space as a distraction to give us time, pack a massive container called the time capsule with as much of our art, music, and history as we could. We launched it at the best speed our technology allowed, coated with the best stealth tech we had, and we waited until it had cleared the volume before we deployed the crime. We hope you found it. We did, murmured Blaz, unaware he had spoken. Everyone knew the story of the pod. It had jump-started galactic civilization when it was found. It was the foundation of galactic culture. The tech of the pod had been a coup, but the art more so. It was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen, the art of the humans and the Alari, art that eclipsed the art of all other species combined. Even more importantly, the pod had made clear the degree to which species could thrive in peace together, charting a course for peaceful political relationships between neighbor species. Most galactic historians divided history into pre- and post-pod. The crime worked. The Zil are gone. So are we. So are the Alari. So is everything else that lived in this part of the galaxy. Everything but this beacon. I put everything I had into the design of this beacon while Shiana worked on the time capsule. It provided a tiny safe zone, just enough space for Shiana and I to live in a humble apartment space with food, water, and plants. Not enough to save either species. Not even enough space for anyone else. Just enough space for us to live our lives together. And we did, in our little bubble of functional reality, surrounded for 1 trillion kilometers on all sides by pure death. We loved so brightly it put the stars to shame. We listened to the music of our cultures, watched the movies, danced the dances. We made love to the music of Mozart and Calandia alike. We lived as many aspects as we could, a lot of which you hopefully found jammed into her brilliant capsule. She died when she was 805. Natural causes, after everything, it seems impossible. I buried her in the soil of our little station garden, per the tradition of her people. I've been alone here for about a year now, I think. I stopped keeping track of time. I think I'm ready to go. I've turned off my chrono implant. I will age rapidly, and I will rejoin my Shiana. The station computer will plant me with her when I pass. It won't be long. This beacon will remain. One day you'll get close enough to pick up the signal, and its technology is beyond anything galactic society is ever likely to be able to harm or turn off. But on the off chance I'm wrong, I ask you humbly to leave it alone, convey its message, and depart this place in peace. 2 species of impossible happiness and beauty stop the advance of an unimaginable menace at the cost of everything. My love and I bore the pride of stopping them, but we also carried the impossible guilt of ending life itself for 2 species that love life so much, and killing anything else that ever ventures here. If you're finding this, we did all of this to give life a chance, so that people like our 2 species might exist again in peace, and go on like our love, endlessly. I can bear this weight no further alone. I miss her. Farewell. Please don't forget us. Silence reigned on the bridge of the Spiteful. After enough silence, the skeleton crew and cameraman looked pensively at Blaz. Both had seen him wade through rivers of blood, and both were stunned to see his normally sharp eyes glistening. They awaited orders to board and salvage. Set our course out of forbidden space. Reunite us with the fleet. A shock rippled throughout the bridge. Rigging the ship for forbidden space and setting up media and plunder contracts had cost a tremendous amount. Leaving with nothing would hurt even Blaz's fortunes. Besides, if the humans' words about the technology of the beacon were true, even a small piece of that technology could set them up for life. Blaz closed his eyes and nodded. I know what you're thinking. Yes, it'll hurt. And yes, I've plundered tombs. I've looted from kings, emperors, and cities. I've done it happily, but I'll have no part of desecrating this place. This is the only place of life among eternal death. This is not a tomb of ego and power. They gave everything. They took the guilt and sacrifice of 2 species on themselves. This is a grave of heroes. Whatever it costs us, it costs them more. The Spiteful moved away, slow and somber in the void. All species still avoid forbidden space, but none call it that anymore after Blaz made the meaning of the transmission clear. Right before he retired from his adventuring career, and returned to his home and family forever. They now call this dead area of space the gift. In the blackness of space rendered as still and cold as death itself, a small apartment remains lit. A pair of small trees still grow in the station garden, dutifully trimmed, watered, fed, and monitored by the station systems. Above the apartment, a last bright beacon still glows, pushing back the darkness. This is the grave of humankind and Alarican alike. It continues to pulse its message of love and sacrifice by two species and by two souls.
Thanks for watching Techno Titan Universe. Subscribe for more.